Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council, Matthew Dickinson. Good morning.
Good morning, Rod. How are you going today?
Very good. We're a long way from America, but what's happened over there in the past couple of days, the alleged attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump, does it concern you as a public figure locally?
Well, it's something that I think Australia is a little bit removed from because we've got gun laws that are dramatically different than America. So I don't feel personally that that sort of thing could happen. Now, you never want to say never, but it does seem like we do have a completely different environment in Australia. Now, on Trump himself, whether you like him, don't like him, that's all irrelevant. Any attempt at someone's life, regardless of their actions or your thoughts on them, is obviously terrible. And someone that is in public life, obviously that's a risk. We've seen assassination attempts before on various political leaders. We've seen assassination attempts on popes. So no one that's in public life is immune from it, and it is a risk that everyone has. But it doesn't have to be something as dramatic as an assassination attempt, Rod. People in public life are under attack in different ways, whether that just be by people hassling them as they walk down the street, taking up their time when they go through and buy some milk and they're suddenly having some people talking about things, attack on social media. There's a whole range of ways that people that are in public life are putting themselves out there. This is obviously the most drastic of those situations, but it is a big decision for anyone to go into public life in any way, shape or form. You
do have to have a bit of a, old term, thick skin.
You're right with all of those things, and obviously, again, with the Trump example, thick skin's not going to help you in that scenario. But again, if I can stress the fantastic job that Australia did after Port Arthur, where really the gun laws in this country are dramatically different, and we just don't see the school shootings, the public shootings in Australia the way you see in somewhere like America. So I think our government and our community has done a fantastic job helping to make sure that we don't see those regular shootings, because it's a terrible thing that we see in some countries where it's just needless loss of life. And I suppose that's the saddest part about it. People have got so much to contribute, and even in this scenario, we talk about the fact that Trump survived, but of course someone in the audience died, someone who was sitting there doing what you can do in a democracy. You can exercise your right to support whoever you want to support in a political environment, and to lose your life just because you're doing that is obviously terrible. A couple of other people still in hospital, and the shooter themselves, obviously they committed a heinous act, but they've still lost their life. And maybe if guns weren't so readily available, maybe that person might have been able to contribute to society in some other great way, but we'll never know now because guns were too readily available and they chose to use them in a terrible way.
It is good that we do have that different way of dealing with things, and that is worth celebrating, and we do that at Australia Day. You've got a bit of controversy there, though, in the Dubbo Regional Council area.
If you don't want to have controversy, Rod, don't make decisions. I think any time we make decisions, then you have a bit of controversy because people don't always agree with every decision, and that's what's wonderful in this democracy. We can do that, and hopefully we don't get the outcomes like we've seen in America. But for the last 2 years, for Australia Day, 2024 and 2023, we've held the Wellington event as a twilight event. 6:30pm on the night before Australia Day, on the 25th of January, we've held the ceremony. In Dubbo, we've held it on the morning of the 26th of January. And we've done that for a number of reasons. But one of the things that was interesting about that, there was some controversy when we first did that. But when you look at the Australian of the Year, you could argue the premier award that you could win in this country, that's done as a twilight event. The Prime Minister hands out the Australian of the Year award as a twilight event. So it didn't seem that big a step to take. There was a change made by Andrew Giles, the minister, the federal minister, that allowed us to have 3 days before or 3 days after the 26th of January as the day you hold your citizenship ceremony. They made a change to the Citizenship Ceremonies Code. And with that in mind, we're looking for 2025, where Australia Day, the 26th of January, will land on the Sunday. That means the Monday is a public holiday. So you'll have a long weekend. You'll have a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So at this stage, there's a recommendation before Council to have the Wellington event as a Friday night event, the 24th of January. In Dubbo, a Saturday night event on the 25th of January, and then Australia Day is free for you to participate and do whatever you want to do on that particular day. Let me stress, Rod, that we are not proposing to change the date. We don't have the power to change the date, nor do we have the inclination to change the date. All we want to do is say, let's have the event as a twilight event on the Friday or the Saturday night. So that's the recommendation before Council. A final decision will be made on the 25th of July. I'd encourage people to send their thoughts through to their local councillors.
Well, I'd like that idea, having one in Wellington Friday, Dubbo Saturday, and then you can celebrate Australia Day. On Australia Day, have a good old barbecue at your place if you want, or just sit down and watch football or whatever you want to do. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the final decision is, and we'll see what the feedback is from the community.
That's a good idea. Some ministers are making their way to Dubbo today.
We've got Penny Sharp and Paul Scully flying in, fog-dependent, flying in this morning. Hopefully they'll still be able to get through the fog and get here. They're making a major announcement about the renewable energy zone, about the RES. They're doing that from Wellington. I don't actually know what it is, Rod. I'd love to tell you what it is, but I don't know what it is. I know I've got to be in Wellington for the announcement, and I'm assuming it'll be a fairly major announcement. Some announcements they make from Sydney, but when they come out to the area, you know it's going to be presumably a good announcement, a major announcement, and have two ministers come out as well is obviously a good thing. So they'll be flying in this morning and down in Wellington for some announcement, and I'm sure you'll hear about it as soon as I hear about it.
All right, well, hope that goes well for you. Yeah, there's been fog right across parts of Western New South Wales this morning. Big one here in Burke as well.
Yeah, and a bit cold, obviously, as well. But I did notice this morning that flights were cancelled. The early morning flights out of Dubbo were cancelled, which has a bit of a knock-on effect throughout the day. So I know those ministers have already had to change their flight. Their first flight they were on, they've changed that already because of the fog. So hopefully they'll be able to get on the flight that can still get them there on time.
Now, the New South Wales State Government has decided to have a league table in regards to DAs.
They do. There's a couple of things they're doing here, and it makes a lot of sense. One of the things is that we have a housing crisis across the state. We know the federal government is proposing to get 1.2 million new homes on the ground across the nation over the next 5 years. The states play an important part in that. But what the state government has said is that councils play an important part. There's no good putting lots of different things in place, having extra funding come through, having extra priorities come through, and then they get stalled at the DA stage for councils. So I actually received a letter from Paul Scully, the Minister for Planning and Public Spaces last week, and he had a statement of ministerial expectations, and that has various timeframes that DAs should be lodged and determined to make sure that we get housing flowing through. To put a bit of pressure on all of that, they've got a league table, and in that league table it basically lists all the 128 councils across the state, the average number of days for assessments, the number of applications assessed, and the total development cost. And Dubbo sits fairly well on that initial league table. Obviously, we try and get things through as quick as we possibly can, but there's a whole range of reasons you might be able to process them as quick as you'd like. And this isn't about ignoring the rules or ignoring the legislation. It's still taking into account all of that, but making sure you put some focus on it. But when you look at the list now, out of the 128 councils, Dubbo sits at 18th in there, but we actually sit quite well when you start to look at the number of applications assessed and the total cost of those. So, for example, 18th on that table, we processed in the last year 588 applications were assessed. In the 17 that are ahead of Dubbo, some of those councils processed 5, for example, or maybe 41 or 35. The next highest behind Dubbo is 267. So you've got a lot of councils that are processing a small number of applications, so it's probably easier for them to get them out the door a little bit faster. But so 588 is quite impressive in that. And the same with the dollar value, Rod. We processed $219 million worth of development applications, or the total development cost. In those 17 above us, the next closest to that was 78 million. But again, some of those were 2 million, 5 million, 7 million. So when you start to take into account the volume and the size of those DAs that we're processing, we look pretty good across the state by comparison.
How hard is it for you to find land to be developed?
I don't think this is just about the land being developed. This is about the actual buildings that are occurring on that. So these assessments that are being talked about here would be houses, would be maybe putting on a garage, maybe doing some small townhouses, doing commercial space down the main street of Dubbo. So all of these different ones are counted in those applications. In terms of land, we do actually have good availability of land at the moment, but some of these would be using existing land. It might be knocking down a house and putting up a new house. So anything that needs a DA before council is part of that application process, part of that assessment process.
It's an impressive figure. Also, staying with housing, a housing strategy, $1.2 million for the Dubbo Regional Council.
Yeah, our staff have been doing pretty well lately with submissions for various grants, and this is another particular one. This is $1.26 million from the Australian Government's Housing Support Program. And this is all about creating regional and affordable housing strategies. And we've also got our Northwest Urban Release Area Master Plan. So this isn't about $1.26 million to go and buy some new homes or build some new homes. You're obviously not going to put too many new homes on the ground for that. This is about making sure council has all the right strategies, the right types of land, whether we've got medium density, low density, high density, whatever it might be in terms of that residential land. Again, this is all about trying to deliver that National Housing Accord target of 1.2 million homes over the next 5 years, which I mentioned previously. So strategies are an important part of that. And what I found over the years in my time being involved with councils, Rod, the really good councils, and I'd like to put Dubbo Regional Council in this category, are very good at planning long term. Not about saying, let's fix that pothole tomorrow, let's go and check out that road next week. It's about what does it look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? And these strategies we're talking about are making sure we've got the appropriate land that we're going to need as Dubbo continues to develop over the next decades, not over the next few weeks. So that's a good score from the government. We have to do that work anyway. We have to develop those strategies, but we'll be able to do it faster now with the $1.26 million from the federal government.
All right, and Parkrun, it's celebrating a milestone.
They just did on Saturday, actually, the 9th anniversary of Dubbo Parkrun. Fantastic parkrun here. That was its 405th event. A few little interruptions during COVID where sometimes it couldn't run. So 405 events. Across those events, we've averaged 260 people per event every Saturday. The world average across the 493 parkruns is 117. So we're doing pretty well there. But I spoke to the park runners on Saturday morning, and I did say the thing that I think sets Parkrun Dubbo apart from every other one I've been to, and I've been to 18 different park runs around the country, Rod, one thing that I've always noticed is every park run I go to, they're always calling out for volunteers. Make sure you put your name down to volunteer. Can we get some more volunteers for today? We need a few people at this particular spot on the track. You go to Dubbo, they don't really mention volunteers, because when you look at it, if you want to volunteer for Parkrun in Dubbo, there's a month-long waiting list, at least a month-long waiting list. There are times when they have groups that are doing volunteering, where various sporting groups, for example, put their name down to take care of a whole volunteering event for a weekend. You might be a couple of months wait time to volunteer. And I think that really is a good reflection, Rod, on the spirit, on the community spirit in Dubbo in general, in particular in Parkrun, to show that so many people are so keen to volunteer and be a part of it. So well done, Dubbo Parkrun. Great group of volunteers. Still some of the original committee members. You've got people like Tim Morris, Miriam Tan, you've got John Robbins, you've got Karen Pello. You've got various people that are involved from day one that are still involved there on that committee.
And can I quickly ask you too, in regards to solar panel recycling, the Wylandra Waste and Recycling Centre, it's doing some good work there.
One of the things that we really want to be a significant part of is the circular economy. We often hear about this term circular economy, but if we can set up strategies to make sure that things that are happening here are staying here, so we've got lots of solar panels. We know at one stage there we were the number one solar connector per rooftop per capita in this nation. But those solar panels might go for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Some people might replace those for various reasons. We don't want to put them in landfill. We want to have some way of recycling those. But it's not just solar panels. It's everything that we might want to try and recycle. So anything we can do, we will do. So obviously our Wylandra Waste Depot is an important part of that, so that when you go out there now, it's a pretty different operation. I remember as a kid, you'd go to the tip, You'd back up a trailer, you'd get in there, well, your dad would tell you to get in there and start scraping it out, and away you'd go. So it's a significantly different scenario now, and I think, again, a much better scenario.
Yeah, I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that that was one of the problems with these solar panels and wind turbines. They're not recyclable, but you're proving that wrong.
Definitely right, and we're not doing the actual breakdown of that, but certainly they are recyclable. I think a solar panel is about 97% recyclable. A whole range of different parts of them are recyclable, and they'll work out better ways to do that. Even the batteries, people talk about the batteries going landfill. They're not going to do that. There's too much effort to dig up the materials required for that battery initially. So all of those parts are recyclable mostly, and they're getting better all the time.
Thank you for your time today.
Thanks, mate.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.